Hey guys, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment, "I love dogs." The anime begins in a city that is contemplating a meteor shower, but among all its inhabitants, there is one who pays much more attention to his phone. The young man is very excited because a girl named Mo is anxious to see him, and he is even more thrilled to finally meet her. Mo says she has already arrived and comments that she loved a dog costume he is wearing, thanking him for fulfilling her wish to see him dressed like that, and letting him know that she is at G-Front Square. He gets very excited, and our hero has no name, which is why I am going to call him Ori. He runs off like a madman to cross the street and get there, but he stops right in the middle of the crossing because Mo starts giving him instructions, making him turn around a few times, and praises him for obeying everything she commands. But while Ori is standing in the middle of the street doing that stupid thing, Bat-Kun ends up running the young man over. And this time Bat-Kun did not do the job alone. A meteor also falls right onto his head, leaving him lost in a kind of unknown universe. But Ori regains consciousness and begins to wonder where he is. Amidst this confusion, a man appears asking how many times he has already been through that. Without any politeness, the fellow starts by saying that it was already his second time. He seems proud of it, but Ori has no idea what he is talking about. At that moment, a kind of call sounds, and the man says he needs to leave because his turn has arrived. So he summons a jetpack and simply flies away from there. Ori thinks that is amazing, but soon realizes that there is a very strange path in front of him. Suddenly, a kind of jetpack also appears for him and carries him flying along the same path. At the same time, we see that man arrive at a kind of exhibition where they announce that this candidate is going to reincarnate for the second time, and they ask if anyone wants to make an offer for him. Apparently, he did nothing relevant in his last life. Because of that, he belongs to the Or classification, and no being shows interest in making an offer. Ori observes all of that closely. When they announce that the auction has ended, the man ends up being encapsulated and turned into a mud microorganism, since that will be his next destination. Right after, Ori is also taken to the same place, and the person responsible for the auction gets very excited. He announces to everyone that it had been a very long time since a reincarnated person coming from Earth appeared, something that also sparks the interest of the people present. Many already want to take him to their own worlds, but before that, they begin to analyze his soul. When they realize the type of soul he has, they notice that it is irregular, and this makes all the gods state that they do not want him. Therefore, they open a hole and he falls, but he ends up falling onto a path that leads him to an even stranger place. There, he notices a certain scent and begins to follow it. When he finally reaches the source of the smell, he comes face to face with two weird beings and a woman who says they will decide his fate. Ori is hypnotized upon seeing her. The girl asks what is wrong, and he replies that it is too much to process. To her, this is perfectly normal. After all, it is the first time he arrives at that place. But Ori says that is not the reason. He comes even closer and starts sniffing her like a complete lunatic. The girl then warns him that if he cannot maintain a conversation with her, she might send him to wander eternally through the darkness of lost souls. Ori tries to prevent that from happening and asks the beautiful lady who just appeared before him who she is. Before answering, she thanks him for the compliment and introduces herself as a goddess, which makes plenty of sense to Ori, given that she is polite and unbelievably beautiful. But what interests him the most is asking what her measurements are. The goddess does not like his lack of manners at all and answers that she will not reply. Furthermore, she states that she does not want to waste time, so she decides to show him something. It is a video showing everything that happened to him before he arrived there. Ori complains, saying that it is against the law, but the goddess replies that laws do not apply to others. Instead of being frightened and fearing for his own life, Ori asks if she would let him feel her up, making the goddess lose her patience. She says that because of that comment she will sue him, because she, unlike him, can use the law whenever she wants. Even so, she decides not to waste any more time on that absurd conversation and explains once and for all that he ended up losing his life while showing the video, revealing also that Mo was recording everything and further informing him that her boyfriend was right by her side, watching while he suffered, something that Ori already suspected. Taking advantage of the situation, the goddess asks a question. She remembers that every time he tried to meet Mo, something bad happened. On one occasion, a bear almost devoured him. On another, mobsters started chasing him at the station. There was also a moment when he was passing by a construction site, and suddenly, everything blew up. And to put a final point to this, He ended up getting run over by a truck and hit by a meteor on top of that. Faced with all this, she asks if he is some kind of Mr. Bean, but Ori considers himself just an ordinary person. The goddess explains that this is the place where failures, pathetic and unlucky people who died in accidents receive one last opportunity to keep fighting. The description is kind of cruel, but he finds himself in a reincarnation room for another world. This news makes Ori quite excited, because it means he will be able to reincarnate and, according to the goddess, he will be able to do so in whichever world he desires. Because of that, she ends up trapping Ori inside that capsule and says that now they are going to start the paperwork for his reincarnation. But since he does not stop making noise and moving from side to side, she warns him that it is better for him to calm down, unless he wants to end up as a paramal, a kind of creature that is forced to live for about 10,000 years. Because of that, Ori tries to behave and starts observing what types of worlds he can reincarnate into. All of that gets him excited because he realizes that there are practically no limits. After all, usually in stories, people cannot choose where they are going to reincarnate. The goddess explains that this happens thanks to her, since she considers herself a better goddess than the others. Given this, Ori starts doing what I know you would do and writes a world where a bunch of women would fall in love with him. Without judgments, because I would do it too. However, the goddess warns that the most popular destinations have a waiting list, because obviously he is not the only person who has ever reincarnated there. If he does not want to wait that long, she can show him a few suggestions. One of the options is a world that has not even been finished yet, and nobody knows if it will ever be completed. That does not hold much interest for Ori, but right after she shows another destination, in which he would reincarnate as a shield hero. Right at that moment he chooses that option. Then he is turned into a hero. To him, that is wonderful, and he gets delighted. But the goddess quickly warns that there is a small detail. The waiting list is 50,000 years long. After hearing that, Ori is no longer so convinced about following that path. The goddess then decides to suggest another alternative. If he really does not want to wait long, he can reincarnate as a villager, just like the one from Minecraft who spends his whole life repeating the exact same sentence. In that case, the wait would be only 500 years. As she had already explained, the best worlds are popular, while the cruelest worlds have much smaller queues. Ori asks more about these cruel worlds. She explains that there is one of them where he would be reborn as a hero, but would be ridiculed for the rest of his life, and this destination has a wait of only 5 minutes. After that, Ori decides that it would be better to reincarnate as a demon king. However, the goddess crushes his illusions by informing him that the wait is 27,000 years long, since that is also a popular destination. Even if he wants to be a demon king destined to be defeated at the end, he would still have to wait about 1,000 years. Now, if he wants to be a demon king who spends his entire life being the butt of the joke, the queue drops to just 8 minutes. She also comments that many people manage to get good worlds simply by thinking outside the box. Instead of choosing to be the heroes, they opt to reincarnate as the weapons they use, like a sword, for example. But even that option is starting to get very competitive, since Ori is a failed womanizer with the soul of an adventurer. The goddess states that whatever destination he wants will probably have a massive queue. Even so, that does not seem to bother him. Whatever his decision may be, she asks him to choose quickly, because in a few moments a series that she likes very much is going to start, which, by coincidence, Ori also knows. Because of that, he imagines that both of them came from the same world. But the goddess makes it clear that she does not intend to waste time on small talk, as he continues to take a long time to decide. The goddess warns that she really is going to turn him into a bacterium as a punishment. Even so, Ori remains full of doubts and has no idea what he wants to reincarnate into. So the goddess explains that whatever his choice may be, he will return to that place if his new life is not as he expected. After thinking for a bit, Ori finally makes his decision. He wants to reincarnate as a powerful hero surrounded by a huge harem of pretty girls. Once again, the goddess reminds him that this destination has a waiting list of thousands of years. What she did not expect was that Ori had an absurd idea. The trick is that he does not want to be like a hero, but rather a part of him, more precisely like one of his ribs. Even the goddess herself is shocked by the level of Ori's stupidity. Yet he is satisfied with his idea. After all, that way the girls in the harem will be able to keep caressing that part of his body all the time. A pretty useless goal. The goddess just sighs and says that if that makes him happy, there is not much to do. So she wishes him a safe journey, while he thanks her for being the only girl who was ever kind to him. Immediately afterward, the goddess prepares the transporter, electrocuting him and sending him off to his new life. With the job finally completed, she simply settles in to watch the cartoon she wanted to see. However, not even a minute passes and Ori reappears coming from the sky, happily trying to hug the goddess. As a result, he ends up receiving a good strike for acting inappropriately. Truth be told, she had already imagined it, but he says he had a very happy life. The goddess then asks why he returned. With a sad look, he answers that he did not get a happy ending. When he begins to explain everything that happened, she interrupts him and says there is a better way to discover the truth. So she orders her mechanical friend to connect to Ori's memories so they can watch everything directly. Thus, we are taken to the dark world, where the hero is the strongest being of all, capable of defeating any monster, no matter its size. During one of these battles, his clothing is destroyed, which serves merely as an excuse to show off how muscular he is, and also to reveal that the hero's rib is actually Ori. In this world, the hero's mission is to save the highest possible number of heroines, who always demonstrate their affection as a way of expressing gratitude. Since Ori is precisely the hero's rib, he also ends up receiving this affection. Whenever a girl is saved, she inevitably ends up caressing that region. While watching all of this, the goddess asks why she is seeing this kind of scene, since someone like her should not be watching this type of thing. But among all the girls saved by the hero, a redhead stands out for seeing him in a very different way, because she is in love with him. Only it becomes evident that the hero does not have the slightest interest in romance. After that, Ori does something very funny. He himself confesses to the girl, because the hero did not want to accept her. He states that he will take her. But at that moment both of them get a fright, because they have no idea who just spoke. Ori continues talking without stopping, until the girl realizes that there is something talking from inside the hero. The hero panics and starts asking who that voice is. Then Ori replies that he is his 10th rib on the right side. The hero does not even think twice and rips out a rib. Only it was to no avail because he ripped out the wrong rib. When he throws the rib onto the ground, a new human being is born from it, which is a perfect copy of himself. From then on, the two begin to fight, and neither of them manages to gain an advantage, since they are completely identical. Ori explains to the goddess that the battle remained balanced until the clone landed a decisive strike, and the reason is that he possessed one more rib than the original hero, which gave him a small advantage. Thanks to this, the clone defeats the hero, scattering his bones across the ground. Afterward, he basically becomes a villain, but Ori finds that part boring and simply skips it. Continuing the story, the clone uses magic to revive all the ribs of the original hero, and from each of them a new clone is born. The plan was to absorb all of them to increase his own power even further, but he did not imagine that the new clones would also possess the exact same strength as him. As a result, everyone prepared to fight one another. Meanwhile, the only rib that does not turn into a hero is precisely Ori. Even so, 24 heroes enter a battle to decide who will be the true definitive hero. It is fighting everywhere. Some clones even go so far as to create new copies of themselves using their own ribs, while others, for some reason, even start declaring their love. In the midst of all this confusion, Ori ends up falling into an abyss, but a heroine dressed in an animal costume manages to save him and takes him away from the battle. The goddess considers that a selfish act on the girl's part, but Ori enjoys every second because he is quite perverted. In the end, the third rib ends up winning the battle. To put an end to everything, he eliminates all the other ribs, which are later buried by the heroines that the hero had saved throughout his incredible journey. Meanwhile, Ori continued living alongside the fox girl, and to him that was a happy life. As for the goddess, she believes the fox girl is crazy, and that Ori is also completely insane, which is why she prefers to stop watching those memories. Even so, she ends up discovering how the story ended. A few days later, a gardener heroine found Ori lying on the ground, while the fox girl was asleep. Upon seeing him, she thought he would make an excellent ingredient to prepare a broth. She ended up grinding Ori up to turn him into fertilizer, without having the slightest idea that he was the hero's rib. Despite having had plenty of fun in that life, he returned because he regretted the choice he made, mainly because of such a tragic and unexpected ending. However, the goddess does not see any regret in his eyes. On the contrary, she notices that he really enjoyed that experience a lot. In fact, he also returned because he wanted her to caress him after everything he had been through. The goddess replies that she can do that, but warns him that if she does, she will end up turning him into ashes. But Ori does not even care about that. so she launches an attack against him and vaporizes him, turning him into dust. Her intention was to use those ashes as fertilizer, but since there are no plants in that place, she simply restores him right after. Ori comments that he barely felt any pain. Upon hearing this, the goddess warns that next time she will eliminate him slowly so that he truly suffers. Since he returned restored after being burned, he decides to thank the goddess's fate by handing over a gift he had kept from his reincarnation. The hero's 11th rib. She does not even think about accepting such a disgusting present, even though Ori tries to convince her that she could use it to massage her back. The most important thing now is that the goddess needs to grant him a new opportunity to reincarnate, since that will keep happening whenever he becomes dissatisfied with his new life. Only this time, Ori was left without any ideas about which destination to choose, which is why the goddess recommends that he use her candy box to decide his next destination. The box approaches him, and as soon as he holds it, it seems to reflect on his new future. When it finally makes a decision, it spits a treat right into his face. Ori takes the candy and reads the message that informs what his next life will be. The chosen destination is to reincarnate as a hermit crab. But before departing for this new reincarnation, Ori decides to tell the goddess what his previous life was like. First of all, he explains that he was a very hardworking man and lived running from one place to another because of his job. As time went by, he began to feel an increasingly stronger desire growing inside himself. Perhaps because he led an ordinary life, he ended up developing a huge attraction to everything that sparkled in his eyes, and that meant mainly the girls from video games, manga, novels, and any other work of fiction. He never actually had a girlfriend, but he fought every day to try to find one. He searched for his ideal partner even in ancient texts. It reached the point where he joined an organization of archaeologists simply because he wanted to find the goddess of his life. One day, he finally managed to participate in an archaeological expedition, and in that very place he found a goddess, who for some reason did not meet his expectations at all. But at this point in the story, God interrupts him just to confirm if that whole expedition story was true. Ori replies that obviously not, and for being an unbearable liar, he ends up being struck by lightning. Still, it does not take long for God to bring him back to life. Ori says that he loves coming back to life and drinking a little tea, because according to him that is simply delicious. So he asks the goddess what she thought of the life he led. Without making the slightest effort to be gentle, she replies that it was a pathetic life of an otaku. At least he did not turn into a complete idiot. He just developed an addiction to video games. Facing this, Ori tries to explain that he also loves dating sims, but the goddess does not care about that at all. He gets very curious and asks what percentage of the goddess's heart he has already won over. She replies that if 100% represents the maximum, he is at 95%. Ori gets very happy when he hears this and gets quite excited. He believes that very little is missing to win over the goddess, so he begins to shower her with compliments. But when he was about to complete the necessary amount, he decides to ask what would happen upon reaching 100%. The goddess replies that she would fall so madly in love with him that she would end up stuffing him and hanging him up as decoration. After discovering that his fate would be to become a stuffed ornament, he ended up losing enthusiasm. Even so, the goddess does not want to waste any more time, and reminds him that now the time has come for his next reincarnation, that he is going to reincarnate as a crab. Despite seeming like a boring fate, Ori gets very excited and asks if by any chance there is a possibility of reincarnating as a monstrous crab. It exists, but that option has a waiting list of many years, so he will have to die as an ordinary hermit crab. But if he dies right off the bat, he will end up harming the entire food chain. Therefore, the goddess decides to grant some bonuses so he can survive for at least some time. That said, the reincarnation machine is activated, and he is teleported, transformed into a tiny hermit crab. Ori sets off for a world that he has no idea where it is located. While he lives this new life, the goddess remains peaceful, using the rib he gave her as a present to scratch her back. A short time later, he reappears happy, running to hug her once again. In response, the goddess simply vaporizes him. After that, she revives him and Ori begins to tell what his experience was like. According to him, for a simple hermit crab, that life was not bad at all. Everything was going well until the moment he defeated a glass ray, the sovereign of purgatory. Upon defeating it, he technically ended up saving the world. He gets excited and tries to explain the rest of the story, but the goddess interrupts him again, saying she prefers to watch the memories with her own eyes. Thus, we see that Ori's first memory is the moment he emerged from the egg. Many of his siblings were devoured right after being born, but he managed to escape. Later on, he ended up growing up alongside the hero Reincarnates, a man who found him by chance and decided to take that crab along to accompany him on his adventures. But that only happened because the goddess herself granted him that bonus during reincarnation. Furthermore, she also gave him another benefit, turning Ori into the hero's ultimate weapon. Thanks to this, he ended up becoming a supreme hermit crab. But after destroying a mountain, splitting the seas in two, and dissipating the clouds, the hero finally regained consciousness, then began to wonder what the point of a hermit crab was. That ended up traumatizing him, who tried to get rid of poor Ori, but since he had received the bonus of being the hero's ultimate weapon, it was simply impossible to discard him. At this point, the goddess realizes that she herself ended up creating a big problem, all because of her pranks. Soon we see that in the end, the hero really managed to separate himself from Ori. All he needed to do was write his name on the crab's shell, thus managing to break his curse, while Ori ended up meeting Latacha, the sea goddess who lived in an underwater temple, and to top it off was much prettier than the goddess he knew in real life. But hearing that did not please the goddess at all, who almost finished him off once and for all. While living in that temple, Ori began to observe Latacha and decided to transform that place, which before was dark and depressing, into a place with lots of love. The problem is that at that moment the great sovereign Leviathan emerged. The two fought a battle, and Leviathan ended up losing one of his eyes, yet still managed to severely injure Ori. The dumbest thing is that the monster's eye was the exact same size as Ori. After that, Ori went back to wandering the world until being saved by Master Sockeye Salmon, who by coincidence at this moment the goddess interrupts the story again. According to her, everything still made a certain sense up to that point, but a Sockeye Salmon taking a sunbath was already an exaggeration hard to believe. Even so, Ori explains that he trained under the tutelage of this master to be able to defeat the terrible Leviathan. When his master finally died, Ori inherited his supreme technique, which he decided to name Thunder Kick and Hades Purgatory Steel Fire. I do not even know how I managed to say all that. After obtaining a skill with such an exaggerated name, he concluded that the time had come to get revenge, so he went to face Leviathan, ripping his head off using his own pincers and emerged victorious. The most curious thing is that he did not even get to use his special technique that he learned from his master. The important thing is that after the victory he managed to stay beside Latacha, who for some reason decided to accept a crab as a boyfriend. By all appearances, this sea goddess possesses very peculiar tastes, but that is not the main point. What really puzzles the goddess is the reason Ori returned, since apparently he had a happy life beside his girlfriend. The real problem is that despite the two living happily together, Ori still carried the title of the hero's ultimate weapon. This meant that only the hero had the right to use him. Since only the hero could use him, his beloved girlfriend ended up dying the moment she tried to hold him. It was a very tragic farewell, and this sequence of events made Ori grow to hate the hero for having thrown him into the sea, knowing that something like that could happen, even if in part all the blame is also the goddess's, since she was the one who granted those absurd bonuses. Even so, she prefers to stay very quiet and pretend that she has nothing to do with it. Meanwhile, Ori says that he truly had his duel against the hero Reincarnates. In the end, the two simply traded honest blows to the face, and thus both recognized each other's strength, and ended up forgiving each other, leaving everything in the past, including the whole story involving Latacha. From this new friendship a mission was also born. The hero entrusted the crab with the task of defeating Glass Ray, the sovereign of Purgatory who threatened to destroy the world. And this was a mission that Ori was willing to accomplish with his own pincers. So the hero transferred all his power to a simple hermit crab, who departed determined to avenge Reincarnates. But when the time for battle came, almost no one could even see him, since he was tiny. But before that, the hero ended up dying right after passing his powers to the crab. A few birds appeared out of nowhere and simply devoured him alive. But the important thing is that Ori faced that monstrous creature. When the perfect opportunity arose, he used his supreme technique, the Thunder Pounce and Hades Crab Steel Fire, destroying Glass Ray in an epic way. The technique proved to be absurdly powerful, securing the victory. But unfortunately, it was also responsible for the death of Master Sockeye Salmon. On that day, the master just wanted to see the result of his disciples' training and asked him to demonstrate the technique. What he did not imagine was that the stupid crab would launch the attack directly at him. Despite everything, that crab managed to bring peace to the world. Yet no one wanted to recognize him as a true hero simply because he was just a hermit crab. And in the end, Ori died of old age, without managing to achieve the dream he so desired. This ending leaves the goddess quite confused. After all, his dream had always been to be a hero, and technically he managed to accomplish that goal. But Ori clarifies that perhaps that was never his true dream. According to him, the reason he is still dissatisfied is much simpler than that. Throughout that entire life, he was never able to get into mischief, and that had always been his true dream. Anyway, before departing, he still wanted to give a gift to the goddess, which is a can of sake salmon. The goddess simply cannot understand how a human being can be like that, but soon notices something very interesting. The affection meter has just reached 100%, and since now she is in love with him, she decides to fulfill the promise of stuffing him. Ori did not even imagine that story was serious and begins to apologize. But the goddess shows no mercy whatsoever. She even turns him into a hermit crab so that the stuffing looks even nicer. Thus Ori ends up stuffed. Up to that moment, that was not even a big problem for him, since he could still keep looking at the goddess. The real terror begins when she puts him inside a box, preventing him even from seeing her. Meanwhile, the goddess opens a can of sake salmon, just eating fish. To her surprise, she admits that the flavor is actually good. After enjoying her meal, she realizes she still needs to send him to his next reincarnation. So she asks Ori to choose what the next destination will be. But he answers absolutely nothing. For a moment, she even believes that he has gone away. As she continues without receiving a response, the goddess decides to take the opportunity to change clothes. But at that moment, the crab appears up to no good again. And as a consequence, she finishes him off, but afterwards simply revives him. After all, she is a goddess. But the curious thing is that she cannot understand how Ori managed to move even while being stuffed. He survived due to being a complete pervert. According to him, it was enough to hear the sounds the goddess made while changing clothes for his mind to go crazy. In response, the goddess crushes him once again for acting like that. After that, Ori goes back to using the box, which chooses his next destination. This time it decides that he will return as the right door of the Demon King's castle. And the strange thing is that he gets happy with this result. When asked if he wishes to receive any additional bonus, he replies that he would like to be an automatic door. But unfortunately, that is not possible. Even so, he is taken once again to the reincarnation portal. As usual, he ends up being electrocuted again and sent to his new world, where he is reborn as the right door of the Demon King's castle, exactly as he had chosen. When arriving in that world, he truly transforms into that door. Once again, while Ori lived his normal life, the goddess finally managed a few minutes of peace. She was even thinking about ordering more salmon by delivery, but did not even know how to do that. As always, at the moment when she was peaceful, Ori reappears coming from the sky with that crazy attitude of his. This time she did not even want to waste time with complaints, and merely commented that she was very hungry. So Ori replied that she wanted fried rice for her to eat with curry left over from the previous day. Without anyone realizing, the two end up developing a very strange relationship. Ori has already gotten used to that space where he always returns after dying, and is already acting as if the goddess's house were his own as well. He moves around her room with all the naturalness in the world, something that the goddess does not like at all. Even so, he begins to cook. While he prepares the meal, she takes the opportunity to turn on her television and access once again the memories of the last reincarnation. While Ori cooks peacefully, we see what his previous life was like. He spent his days in the throne room exercising his important role as a door, almost never moving until the day he needed to move because his nose started to itch. The worst of all is that the Demon King raised a kind of cat, and Ori was terribly allergic to those animals, which is why he spent all his time sneezing. He also recounts about the powerful monsters in that castle. One of them was General Invincible, a warrior who walked everywhere screaming like a madman. One day he went to talk to the Demon King, but even before entering the throne room, Ori sneezed right at that moment. The general got angry at a simple door for doing that, and started beating it up endlessly. Only it simply would not break because it was absurdly sturdy. The general, who was incredibly strong, always wielded his axes and rushed insanely against enemies, eliminating everyone who appeared in his path, but unfortunately ended up dying, precisely because of Ori and his allergy. And for some strange reason, nobody decided to replace that defective door. It remained in the exact same spot, and most of the castle's generals ended up losing their lives because of it. And the Demon King would never suspect a simple door. At that moment, the goddess is left in disbelief, because she does not remember granting any power of that kind. So Ori explains that his neighbor, the left door, was also a living door. Unfortunately, the two never got along very well. This because the other door wanted to serve the Demon King faithfully, while Ori believed it made no sense to dedicate his life to the Demon King. Because of this difference of opinion, the two spent practically every day arguing. And the most curious thing is that the Demon King actually heard the voices of the two doors. But because of the spell that prevented anyone from suspecting them, he ended up believing he was going crazy, since there was no longer anyone to lead the army properly, and many generals had died. The Demon King's forces began losing more and more battles to the humans. It was around that time that the hero finally appeared, a young man named Gaulet. He ended up finding the Demon King, but even felt sorry for him upon seeing him alone. Still, he needed to fulfill his destiny, and attacked him with all his strength, causing extremely severe injuries until leaving him buried. The problem is that was not enough. The Demon King possessed an infinite growth ability, constantly regenerating and getting more and more powerful. This ability was dangerous and put the hero in a desperate situation. As if that were not enough, the left door also launched a magical attack from behind the hero's back, so he was trapped between the door and the Demon King. Everything indicated that it would be pure defeat. But according to Ori, what happened next was even worse. Somehow he managed to dodge the attacks from the other door. Meanwhile, the Demon King got deeply offended and sad, saying that nobody liked him. Furthermore, he was gigantic and more powerful than ever. Consumed by rage, the Lord of Darkness tried to break out of there by force. That was when Ori ended up defeating him, giving violent door slams. The left door was destroyed and the hero finally achieved victory. Right after that, his 12 heroines appeared out of nowhere to celebrate that unexpected victory. Only once again a problem arises. One of the heroines has cat ears and claws, and since Ori was allergic to cats, he ended up sneezing by accident. The result was that by accident he killed the hero. Furious with that door, the heroines departed for a final battle. During this combat, the entire castle of the Demon King was destroyed and Ori practically ceased to exist. With the story finished and the food finally ready, Ori prepares to eat, but the goddess realizes that she does not recognize the table where the meal was served. Then he says that he brought the left door from his last life, but turned it into a table. The goddess would probably scold him because of that, but she was so hungry that she preferred to praise him for not wasting anything. Then she began to savor the meal, which was so delicious that it made her very happy. Despite being a pervert, Ori also shows that he has a gentlemanly side. When he notices the goddess's reaction, he promises that from that day on he will cook for her every single day. Meanwhile, we follow a small meeting among the gods. In it, they explain something very interesting. In the beginning, the entire universe was a complete chaos. Then the sole creator and true God gave shape to the original world. As time went by, this world kept expanding and new gods were born from the creator himself. Their mission became to continue his work, creating a gigantic multiverse. Currently, these gods are committed to a mission to make their worlds evolve. For that, they send reincarnated people from one world to another. These individuals are considered irregulars and act as true catalysts, accelerating the evolution of the worlds where they are sent to. And upon analyzing the candidates, they end up finding Ori and conclude that he is far too irregular. According to them, he possesses the potential to distort the evolution of the worlds. Even so, there is a very important goddess responsible for overseeing him. For this reason, they cannot interfere in just any way. Yet they decide to keep observing attentively everything he does. Furthermore, during the meeting, they also discover that the goddess ate a can of salmon, precisely the one that Ori had given her as a present. The gods themselves even get to taste it, and after that decide to keep their eyes not only on Ori, but also on that mysterious can of salmon. When the meeting ends, Ori tries to flirt with the goddess once again and comments that he would like to admire those gods better. Before he can continue, she crushes him against the floor. The goddess is already tired of his cheeky attitude, and because of that increases the gravity around him by 10 times. But it does not matter because Ori manages to get up somehow and replies that he does not care about all that pressure, as long as she lets him lie on her lap. When she understands what he meant, the goddess increases the gravity to 100 times, turning him into a pancake, but afterwards simply revives him. On that day, they go back to searching for a destination so that Ori finally stops staying in that place. Except before starting, he was already about to make another one of his jokes of questionable taste. So the goddess threatens him and tells him to hurry up and choose a new destination. He does not argue and takes the usual mysterious box once again, shaking it and waiting for it to reveal his next reincarnation. To his surprise, the destination chosen this time is to be reborn as the second hand of a tower clock. To anyone else, it would not seem like a horrible destination. But Ori gets happy. After all, he would be very high up and would be able to see everything. Before departing to this new world as usual, he starts adding some bonuses to his reincarnation. But this time the goddess really gets worried about the type of absurd ability he might be trying to include. Then he reveals that he had added a bonus so that whenever the clock struck midnight, Ragnarok would happen. Obviously the goddess puts Ori into the reincarnation capsule, turning him into a clock hand and sending him to his new world, hoping that this time he will finally be happy and stop bothering her. But this reincarnation takes a little longer than usual. The goddess even gets to look at a clock and wonders if everything is going well. At that moment Ori reappears before her. He announces that he is back, all excited. The goddess merely asks him to return the worry he made her feel for a few moments. Ori gets happy upon discovering that she really worried about him. But she ignores that comment and says that since he acquired experience as a clock, next time she could turn him into a sundial in the middle of the desert. But what interests the goddess is discovering how his life was in that world. She turns on her television to watch the memories, and we see that Ori really reincarnated as the second hand of the kingdom's largest clock, a huge tower that served as the hour hand separating the hero. But there was something that bothered him deeply. Beneath the tower lived several couples in love. Annoyed by that scene, he joined the hour hand and the minute hand, who were also reincarnated. The three shared the exact same hatred and decided to mess up the time to cause confusion. The hour hand was made from the world tree. The minute hand was made from precious jewels, and Ori as the second hand was made from envy. When trying to explain what his day-to-day was like, the goddess imagines that his routine must have been repetitive, but he says he made sure to create exciting events every day. At least that was what he believed. Whenever the second hand reached the number 12, he launched a random spell over the city, sometimes making sure to aim directly at the couples he was jealous of. Since the effects were random, some people received incredible benefits, while others turned into monsters or suffered strange effects. The problem is that regardless of the outcome, everyone had a lot of fun, until one day something unexpected happened. A judgment lightning bolt hit the king right during an official parade. He was left bald and naked in front of all the people. Furious with the humiliation, he ordered that clock to be destroyed, but the entire population started to protest, stating that it would be a huge injustice. The hero himself declared that the clock was important to him and that he would not allow its destruction. Thanks to the support of the hero and the rest of the people, it ended up being saved. Even so, the king was curious and ordered the hero to investigate how that clock was able to cast magic. Using all his intelligence, the hero managed to reach the three hands, since the magical attacks always happened when an hour was completed. The first conclusion was to remove precisely the hour hand. After they removed the hour hand, peace reigned in that place for a good while. The goddess considers this a complete absurdity, since the one causing all the problems was Ori. So he explains that a moment came when he simply could not stand those people anymore. He ended up going crazy and went back to launching a huge amount of magic over the city. As a consequence, they decided once again to destroy the clock. But once more the whole population came out to defend the tower, stating that demolishing it would be a cruelty. Even the demon king himself appeared to support the cause, telling the king that not even a monster would do something as terrible as demolishing that clock. Since the demon king spoke directly to him, the king gave up on the destruction once more. Instead, he tasked the demon king himself with discovering how that tower cast magic. They repeated practically the exact same investigation as before and ended up removing the minute hand. And the problem is that since Ori was made of dark matter, he was practically terrible. Even so, a week later he fired a merciless infernal flame against the king. While the king suffered, Ori was enjoying the situation. The monarch decided once again that the clock needed to be destroyed. Only once more the population protested, saying that only someone without a heart would be capable of destroying that tower. Among the people who defended the clock, there was a curious fellow named Tanaka. He was just an ordinary man who passed by there every day. Whenever Ori saw him, he would launch an offensive spell at him. The strange thing is that instead of running away or avoiding that place, Tanaka came back every day eager to receive more attacks, since he was a complete masochist. Even so, Tanaka went to the king begging him not to destroy the tower. Since it was Tanaka who was asking, he ended up agreeing once again. The situation began to repeat itself, but there was something very different about this man. The king himself treated him with huge respect and consideration, and it was Tanaka who managed to perceive Ori's presence and deduced that he was a reincarnated king. While analyzing all of this, the Demon King's army initiated a massive attack against the city. The troops were powerful and plunged the kingdom into chaos. This left Ori quite annoyed, because in his opinion nobody besides him had the right to destroy that country. So he resolved to launch a shower of healing meteors against the Demon King. They were called that because despite being meteors capable of crushing anyone, they had the shapes of cute animals. The king, Tanaka, and all the others were impressed by the power of that clock tower, but ended up being crushed by Ori's meteors, who defeated the demon king and restored peace to his world in his own way. Curiously, Tanaka reincarnated in another world. This sparks the goddess's curiosity, who decides to investigate this case with more attention in the future. And in the end, the meteor shower itself also destroyed the clock tower, causing Ori to die once more. Ori hands over another present to the goddess. This time it is basically the remains of the minute hand, but the material is very beautiful, so the goddess decides to use it as decoration. Taking advantage of the fact that Ori spent an entire life as a clock, he ended up getting very good at calculating time in a way. He manages to measure the exact right moment for the two of them to prepare the instant noodles. But as soon as he finishes preparing it, he tries to feed the instant noodles directly into the goddess's mouth and ends up being electrocuted for acting like a complete idiot. Afterward, he is revived and gets excited because he finally wants to eat. Only the goddess ended up burning his chopsticks, so gently she lends him hers. But to Ori this is something absurd, because he believes that could be considered an indirect kiss, since he respects the goddess very much and decides to use the other end of the chopsticks. After finishing the meal, his next reincarnation arrives. This time he has a great feeling and believes that finally something good is going to happen. But the chosen destination is to be the voice inside the hero's head whenever he levels up. In other words, his function will merely be to give warnings and information. Even the goddess herself feels pity when imagining such a life. Even so, Ori gets excited. With an extra ability, he wishes to be able to talk directly with the hero, because that way perhaps he can find some heroine along the way. The goddess accepts the idea, but makes it clear that in case he has further intentions, the system is configured for the hero to be a man. After so many trips between different worlds, Ori is already used to the pain of reincarnation. The goddess herself recognizes that he really adapts very quickly. Thus he is finally sent to the next destination. This time he arrives in a very strange world, where everything seems to be black and white. Technically he would be just a voice, but from his point of view, he still possesses a room and a space of his own, while he enjoys his new world. The goddess is trying to figure out which other instant noodles she could eat, but Ori returns very quickly. This time he does not return happy. He is very sad because the hero ended his life. In other words, the hero really had further intentions, and in the end of the decades ended up being a man. Ori's plan was to keep whispering indecent things endlessly, but everything ended up going wrong. As always, the goddess herself decides to watch everything that happened to understand the situation. In the beginning, Ori began talking to the hero when he was only 10 years old. He put on a seductive voice and announced to the boy that he had reached level 1. The hero obviously got disgusted. Furthermore, Ori went on to torment him constantly. He kept listening to him, calling him heavy and doing other annoying things. So the hero simply did not want to accept him. And this even with Ori giving his all to try to entertain him with his beautiful voice. But time ended up doing its job. 5 years passed and little by little the hero stopped hating him. But there was a big problem since the hero never accepted Ori, and he could never level up. In other words, those were 5 wasted years of a talented hero. And another way that Ori discovered to torment the hero was right in the moments when he entered a battle. If he missed a strike, Ori would keep repeating constantly that he had missed the attack, and then start singing like an idiot. That is something that would drive him crazy. What he did not expect was that besides him there were other voices inside the hero's head. There was the battle voice that arrived and gave him a scolding, in addition to the command voice and the statistics voice. In other words, there was practically a crowd living in the hero's mind. In any case, Ori kept beatboxing as time passed, and the hero kept leveling up. Because of this, even the person responsible for the music started getting annoyed with Ori, who was just trying to make things more exciting. The hero himself was also tired of the situation and kept telling him to shut up. But when he finally reached level 10, at least the hero had already become quite powerful. There were also times when Ori forgot to announce that the hero had leveled up, but even so managed to fix that once in a while. The hero had an unpleasant life, while Ori was very comfortable inside his head, even asking him to deliver packages in some way that nobody could understand. But not everything was perfect for Ori. The hero possessed a system where for every 10 levels gained, one of the voices was eliminated, and one day the command voice simply disappeared from that world. But discovering this ended up motivating the hero even more, who started leveling up like crazy to manage to eliminate all the voices. That way he reached level 21 in the blink of an eye. But the voice eliminated this time really left Ori very sad. because it was the delivery guy's voice. He ended up being collateral damage, and thus several other voices kept disappearing continuously. They were several random professions, but when he reached level 50, even the electrician's voice ended up dying. The only way the voices had to try to survive was by talking to the hero. They cried and begged and asked him to stop, but that only made him even more determined to eliminate them. And there was a detail that Ori forgot to mention. He thought that the goddess already knew this, because she was the one who gave him the bonus that allowed him to talk. But she did not realize that he could literally speak out loud outside of the hero's head. In other words, the people passing nearby could also hear everything that was happening inside Ori's mind. And for some strange reason that he could not understand, the hero seemed to fear the dialogue more and more. The torture reached such an absurdity that the hero discovered a way to enter his own mind. Thus he began to attack the voices directly. Never in his whole life had he felt so much hatred for anyone. So he began to eliminate all the voices inside his head one by one. But he heard one that managed to defend itself, and even gave him a good beating. And of course we are talking about Ori. The experience he gained was also shared among the voices. For example, Ori was at level 80. Even so, that hero did not want to give up. So he ended up allying with the Demon King, who was going to do the favor of entering his mind and eliminating Ori, but ended up receiving many blows and was eliminated. And Ori began to sing because he defeated the Demon King. But finally there was a solution to all of this. It was something quite simple, but the hero had not noticed. Inside that house where the voices drank, there was also a place where it was possible to disable them directly. So in the end, the hero never activated that again. And Ori ended up losing his life, and it was over. Ori was also very sad because this time he could not find a good present for her. He only found a card that was used to buy things, but nothing that the goddess wanted. But he remembered that he had damaged the goddess's gifts, so he decided to buy some for her, which made her very happy. After a while, the goddess was watching a very strange Japanese drama. That story inspired her in some way to say that it was time to give a hug. Ori thinks it is with him. Goes running all happy like a little dog. He thought his moment had arrived, but then when he gets closer, he realizes that perhaps it really could be his moment. According to the goddess, this time she decided to be the affectionate person and tries to hug Ori, but he dodges because he is very afraid. She says that being a goddess of reincarnations for so long, sometimes she suffers attacks in which she needs human affection, and those series she watches do not seem to help, making her go crazy and really want to hug Ori. But that never happened. What happened was that Ori tried to make her happy by giving more presents, like when he gave that fish. According to him, seasoned it gets very good. But she says she does not want that. She wants a hug. But he continues several times pretending he does not understand anything, which starts to annoy the goddess, because now she is giving the opportunity for his wish to become reality. So every time she says she wants a little hug, her voice sounds like it came from hell itself, since even though she tries to seem cute, Ori sees the reality. The truth is that he wanted to have a lot of fun hugging her, but is afraid of the consequences. The goddess tries to tell him that the consequences will not be so severe, because when the attack passes, regret and shame will only take his life, time after time, until he loses his memory. He was already scared. Now he gets even more so. He just wants to reincarnate and escape from that place. So he goes to the fortune box, so that later he has the chance to become a vegetable. She says that a world where vegetables are like him must be horrible, so he will just reincarnate into a specific one, even if the preparations were already made. The goddess keeps insisting that she wants a hug before he reincarnates, but Ori prefers anything instead of that, because he is still very afraid. So he forces the capsule to reincarnate, leaving the goddess alone with her solitude. After a little while, Ori ends up returning and brings his new present. He sees that she is calmer and asks if the attack has passed. According to the goddess, yes. And she also apologizes for having worried him, but then tries to hug him. Since she let this opportunity slip away now, she does not even care about his opinion. She just wants to see his report. So Ori connects that thing to his head by himself. And thus we see that in this story Ori was the tomato hero. He stood up to defeat the Demon King who threatened the human world. According to him, it would be the tomato that would save the world. And he was very aggressive from the beginning. But in the end he was just a tomato. So he started gathering companions. He would go to the other vegetables to ask if anyone wanted to defeat the Demon King. But no matter how much he asked, nobody answered. And that happened because he was a vegetable. However, when he screamed with all his might, the night guard ended up hearing, and the poor old man got very scared, because he thought he was hearing a ghost of his wife talking around there. but at the end of the day the old man ended up joining his group. Something that the goddess does not understand how happened. The goddess says that he is a very sociable man and she wants to prove it right now. But he does not want to do that. So he continues telling that having an elderly man in the group was a visual design problem, which is why he cast a spell to transform him into a very attractive onion. In this manner the onion warrior was born. Ori says that this is the present he brought for her. Besides telling that first they fought against a cook. The two joined forces, but the cook was very frightening, to the point of ending up hurting the poor onion, who later returned to being a normal old man. But Ori saw an opportunity and sealed his soul inside a vegetable that was nearby. This time Ori ended up becoming the villain and ended up cooking the cook. He also brought this as a souvenir for the goddess. And in the same way more companions kept joining the group, who are actually all the vegetables he just brought to her. But she keeps wondering if that is edible. Anyway, the point is that there were too many companions. But despite that, each and every one of them kept falling in battle, because the demons ate them. When they reached the Demon King's castle there were only 4 left. Among them were the tofu, an onion, and the evil dragon god. The funniest thing is that that dragon, who was very scary, was the weakest of all. He was barely level 72, while Mr. Onion was level 98, and precisely the maximum level of that world was 99. The tofu on the other hand was level 92, and now the goddess got curious, so she asks what his level was, and Ori says he was level 872. This happened because an extra ability added something that allowed breaking the limit of levels. But no matter how much he leveled up he continued to be a vegetable, and thanks to that same strength was how they kept advancing until the moment came to face the swordsman Demon King, who was a potato that was very angry for some reason. Ori did not understand this because once he met him in a tavern, and he was quite friendly. He had some defects on his face, but it was nothing serious, and since Ori is very kind he wanted to make him look handsomer, which is why he ended up turning him into a potato. That is a good reason for him to have gotten nervous and wanted revenge, but in reality it was because Ori stole the dragon by feeding him. In fact his favorite food was eggplant, but he did not eat much either, which is why he left the eggplant half-eaten. After that the final duel began, and Ori faced a potato that was also very dangerous, since it could cut time-space itself. The tofu risked its life to stop its sword, but while they were in that situation, the onion also took the opportunity to tell a story to the potato. It made it cry so much that it reached the point of leaving it blind. Later the evil dragon god finished everything, and Ori took the opportunity to destroy the potato, and in that way the Demon King fell and the world went back to being at peace. But since the people did not want the hero to rot, they ended up planting him in a vegetable garden, and now they take care of him with affection, calling him the tomato hero. And because of that, out of all the vegetables, the only one missing was precisely the tomato. Meanwhile the goddess calmed down and is no longer having her hugging attack. So Ori wants to take the opportunity to make a curry with all the vegetables he brought for her. Something that for some reason pleases the goddess quite a lot, because they can start cutting the onions while hugging each other. But the goddess gets angry at herself, because she hates when she has these attacks, and from afar Ori looks at her and sees that it seems she might go back to normal. She says she is fine. So Ori wants to make sure and jumps toward her, but ends up being evaporated. But later he is revived to drink his little tea. The goddess gets quite surprised, because every time he revives he acts as if nothing had happened. And according to Ori this happens because he has already learned not to feel pain at this point, since he knows it is already time for his next reincarnation. So he goes again to the box, and now it was his turn to be reborn as the padlock of a treasure chest. Again he does not think this is bad at all, something that is worthy of admiration or worthy of fear because he is sick. He was going to add a good extra ability to be able to attack, but the goddess stops him because since he is a padlock he does not need to attack nor defend. Despite that, Ori continues to like her very much and wants to bring another souvenir when he returns. After a few minutes she was trying to open a safe. Then Ori appears very happy. At that moment she says she cannot open the place where she always keeps the sweets. It is a hiding spot so he does not eat them. Then Ori uses his tricks to manage to open it without problems. He says that now that he understands so much about padlocks, he could even open the padlock of her heart. But again she finishes him off. When he revives she wants to see his report once again. So we see that the story begins with the padlock of a treasure chest, which was located in the sacred temple. Apparently the padlock cost around 20 yen. It was way too cheap. And to make matters worse, the key to open it was right in the room next door. And that key was a luxury piece made of pure gold and decorated with precious jewels. After having spent so much, The goddess wants to know what was inside that treasure. So Ori reveals that inside was the Demon King. By this point the goddess is not even surprised anymore and merely wants to know how they managed to put that thing inside the box. According to Ori, they shoved him in by force, folding him in 6 parts. This was the Demon King named Spaces. In other words, the king who had a lot of space. A long time ago this Demon King tried to destroy the world with his power. He began making humans fall so they would become servants of his seas. But out of nowhere a chest appeared that ended up trapping him. And that was when Ori decided to be the padlock of that chest. From the inside the Demon King was always cursing the god who sealed him. Mostly because they used to get along so well that the Demon King lent him a game, but the god ended up selling it. Furthermore, he asked for a bite of his ice cream and ended up eating it all. He forgave him for provoking the eternal war between humans and demons, but never think of forgiving him for putting lemon on his fried chicken without asking. Seeing how things were, both Ori and the goddess took the Demon King's side, and they felt very sorry for him. So much so that the goddess spoke to poor Spaces. She said that life is hard, but that at least by eating something delicious he would forget everything. She even recommended the sockeye salmon because it is incredible. But the Demon King was furious, because a simple human was speaking to him, and upon seeing that he was starting to behave badly, Ori used a lemon to squirt on top of him. The Demon King began to suffer because he was going blind. Thus time passed, and people arrived who saw liquid inside the treasure box. They even thought it was the omen of something very sinister that was about to happen. It turns out that besides that, Ori also ended up filling the box with vegetable oil. Spaces was extremely enraged, and that ended up making him awaken. He began using his power from inside the chest, and the priests considered this a danger. So they raised another barrier, and this was a barrier that made that oil burn. It ended up burning the poor Demon King little by little. But suddenly the box began to glow. Then an old man appeared bringing the key to the chest, who for some reason had a strong urge to open that box. But Ori was very scared because his keyhole was way too small for a key of that size. So he ended up squirting lemon in that old man's eyes too. But that ended up making the man even more irritated. So much that it made him transform, because he would not forgive an offense against a god. And that old man was actually a god, who was furious because that demon was resisting. Even while sealed, he believed that was pure evil, and for that reason wanted to finish him off with his own hands. He drew a sword to be able to purify that evil soul. But when he was about to cut the chest, Ori squirted vegetable oil on him and he fell. And he ended up doing this consecutively with various types of oil, from the cheapest to the most expensive. He made the sacred sword fall so many times that it ended up breaking. Upon seeing his sword broken, the god felt terrible, and began telling the Demon King that he was way too devilish. While crying, he ended up receiving an electric shock, an ability that Ori got just because it came with the chest. And the chest is also a reincarnated person. The god ended up falling in the end. The winner was the hero, since the hero was reincarnated as the treasure chest. As both the god and the Demon King ended up falling, the discord between humans and demons disappeared, and the world went back to being at peace on its own. We discover that the chest hero was also a robot that loved remaining transformed. The god also ended up removing the padlock, in other words, Ori. So his life ended and served no purpose. Our very kind hero Ori brought as a souvenir the remains of the Demon King that were in the chest. We also see that the Demon King who passed away was reincarnated into a fish, because it was the only thing he wished for in life. We begin to see something strange, as if this world were not strange enough. But it is very curious because we see a man staring at the Demon King. The Demon King is already ready to pounce on him, but the man pays no attention to him. He merely begins searching everywhere and then apologizes. He was looking for someone and cannot find her. The Demon King thinks that Blockhead is mocking him, so he wants revenge, transforms into a huge creature, and then ends up being defeated by this man. Thanks to this person named Tanaka, the kingdom regained peace. But that does not matter to him at all. He continues on his way because he has things to do. He traversed many other lands where demon kings exist, all to find his beloved. He defeated one after another, but could never find her. The only thing he achieved was that the worlds remained at peace, and he continued following his path. According to the goddess who observed his entire story, that man is a romantic, and the goddess says that name also sounds familiar. When Ori tells that now he makes a living letting people hit him, the goddess remembers why he is the pervert who loves feeling pain. Then Ori says he is his best friend and also his greatest rival, even if the goddess would love for him never to meet that man again. Then Ori suggests that she become his girlfriend and ends up turning into dust once more. The time for his next reincarnation has arrived. He shakes the box until his next world comes out, where he will reincarnate as a string that binds the secret ninja scroll. Ori is already thinking about the possibilities. He asks the goddess what would happen if his entire body were an erogenous zone, whether he would feel certain things every time someone touched him. But the goddess tells him not even to think about it. The boy says that not everything is good news. If that happens with an elderly man, it is not going to be pretty at all. He continues the joke and the goddess says she will make the hero be very attractive, which makes the goddess laugh because she always pretends to be a saint, but also likes to play with those things. Something that offends her deeply because she does not speak the language of inferior creatures, much less their nonsense, which could all end up very badly. Ori changes the subject and notices that she has been gaining weight from eating so many sweets. He recommends a teaspoon of olive oil, so she starts to improve. The goddess gets even angrier and says she will make him swallow that entire bottle before leaving. No sooner said than done. She fills his entire capsule with olive oil and then sends him flying. She starts exercising, measures her weight and sees that everything is very fine because she managed to lose weight. The hero wants to reward herself with some cakes and was about to be very happy. But Ori appears again. The boy gets worried because she is eating too many cakes. But she says there is no need for that concern. She is going to create a new diet and every time he exercises she will lose weight. The goddess wants to see his report while he kills himself running on the treadmill. Ori thinks she is very cruel, but ends up obeying. While he is suffering, we see how this story begins. They introduce us to the legendary ninja Cold Air, who was the author of the Secret Scroll. He wrote a secret technique in that scroll that makes the most extreme environments bearable, because his environment was surrounded by a blazing heat. As soon as he finished doing that, he executed that technique and put the cooling on maximum power. Cold air was a type of air conditioner, but there was also a problem. That technique used too much mana, and using it for a long time was not efficient. The ninja ended up sealing his own technique, and to manage to do that, he used Ori. The problem is that when he grabbed Ori, he realized he was soaked in oil, which disgusted him greatly. But that was the goddess's doing. Cold air, even with tears and feeling disgust, ended up binding that scroll. He felt very terrible because he was obsessed with cleanliness. That was torture. Time passed a century later. Everything was at peace. But something happened that nobody expected. There were two gods sustaining that world. They were a very happy and content couple. But that man ended up getting involved with another woman. This triggered a fight that froze the entire world. But then a solitary ninja appeared who swore to save the world. The name of this ninja was Felix. The man arrived at the village and infiltrated to look for the map to the secret scroll, and received an impressive reception, because they had a secret anti-human barrier technique. The boy ended up electrocuted because nobody wanted to hand that scroll over to him. Felix had a great idea. He would have to use insulating gloves. He went to a store to buy one. However, the cruel ninjas who sold to him charged 10% more expensive because he was an enemy. But they did not hate him enough not to sell. And that was how Felix tried once again to open that door, but discovered that the gloves did not insulate anything. Not even that, because they were gloves to use with a cell phone, since they were ninjas. But they were also very civilized. In any case, Felix got tired of that and ended up breaking the door to get in, which made him become an enemy to all the ninjas in the village. In the end, he ended up clearing a path and arrived at the location as best as he could. It was there that he found the map he so desperately needed. The ninjas were pursuing him, but he also had his own techniques. Using fireworks, he managed to escape from them. The problem was that it ended up setting the village on fire. He finished planning where he needed to go. Felix was very happy because his objective was about to be accomplished. He had finally found the scroll and Ori was in that place. The problem is that he remained covered in olive oil, so it was extremely slippery. Felix could not hold him in any way whatsoever, and Ori did not help either, because that guy was more attractive than him, and that was what he would forgive the least. He ended up throwing a shower of oil all over his face. But even so, Felix did not give up for anything. He tried to execute a certain technique to manage to end that, but he ended up getting covered in olive oil as well. Yet that did not stop him. He captured the scroll with telekinesis and ended up freeing Ori. He managed to obtain a comfortable and super fresh climate. But the goddess noticed that there was a small plot hole, since during all this time Felix was a Brazilian and should not know how to read Japanese. But the secret is that Ori felt sorry for him, which is why he lent him a translation app and helped him. Thanks to Felix, the temperature of the world was fixed at 18 degrees. But it is just that that life was not very interesting either. Ori ended up returning, and even brought back as a souvenir those touchscreen gloves, which surprises the goddess, because she thought that he would bring olive oil. At this point in the game, Ori had already run 27 kilometers, but the goddess wants to eat cakes, so there are still 42 kilometers left for him to finish. To finish faster, she increased the speed to 40 kilometers per hour. After a considerable amount of time, we see that a gift has just arrived for the goddess. They open it and realize that they are some kimonos, a very beautiful garment according to Ori. He assumes that some god sent that to her. But the goddess says no, they always send razor blades to her, which means that they hate her very much. The goddess wants to store that clothing because she does not want to try it on, and much less with Ori by her side. The moment for his next reincarnation arrives, and since last time he was an inanimate object, now he truly feels like being a living being. When he sees what he received this time, it seems very bad. Almost always anything makes him happy. But he says that this now is something very personal to him. Even the goddess gets curious. He tells that he ended up becoming the discomfort of a single person who sees a couple kissing in front of them. It is the thing he wanted to be, because he has gone through that way too many times. Rules are rules, and he will have to go to that world. The only thing he thinks is that it is going to be a massacre when he arrives there again. Time passes, and the goddess takes the opportunity to try on a kimono. She looks beautiful and very happy. But out of nowhere, Ori arrives and loses no time. So he says that she looks very beautiful, even teasing her by saying that anyone looks good with the proper attire. But the goddess warns that he needs to shut his mouth, and Ori will end up making some sandals that will be used until they wear out. And since she is already naturally irritated, she does not want to waste time. She wants to see the report right away. This time he reincarnated as the discomfort of a single person who sees a happy couple kissing right before them. It is a tragic figure. And since Ori is now an emotion and is not even a person or an object, he transformed that discomfort into something even more terrible. First, he started by seeing what would happen if he put on samba music, and that made the old man act in a very strange manner, and people judged him. Ori tried to improve the situation several times, although the only thing he screamed inside that man's head was that he needed to break up. Ori ended up leaving him alone, and we changed the scenery. An old lady introduces the hero Hindanopo Pazamaso, the righteous Iron Fist. He was hyping up several children who were around there, and one of the actors also seemed to be a super enthusiastic person, who announced the story of the hero who discovered that the first slime he faced was his former pet, and that such strange gentleman ended up pleasing Ori because he was funny. And while that gentleman and the slime were acting out that play, something bad happened. The slime saw that the lovebirds started showing affection in front of him, and the hero was also in the same manner. Until suddenly Ori arrived to make things even worse. The old man who acted as the hero dramatized the story even more and started because he was the one who had run away from home when he was 5 years old. The screams and the emotion that they had were so loud that they bothered the couple. The old man told the slime that he was his dog from many years ago, and that he had no alternative, because he wanted to be a hero. So he started beating him in front of those people until the point where the slime ended up defeated on the ground, and who had also surrendered in the face of all that was the couple, who did not know what to do and just wanted to flee from the place. Whereas the other people who were in the play were amazed by the performance. The hero was surprised by a miracle and decided to become a comedian, while Ori continued being part of his discomfort. So the hero also realized the importance of jealousy and went out alone looking to feel discomfort. With every couple he saw, he bothered them so that they would provoke jealousy in him. He went from one side to another, back and forth. His obsession and determination were incredible, so much so that the hero ended up hiring a couple who liked to show their love in front of single people. That gentleman did all of this because he loved the feeling of when the aura appeared. Since that was what made him become a great actor, he laughed so much that he ended up becoming very popular among children and elderly people who started to imitate him. The name of that gentleman was Joke, so the name suited him very well. Everything was going very well until it went terribly wrong. A man appeared who felt very jealous of Joke and wanted to beat him up because he was the Demon King and was the first person that War abandoned. This person tried to become famous in the same way, which is why he needed to have couples in front of him. But he was not well received because he was just a copy. It continued until the final battle between the two arrived, and the winner would be the one who told a joke first and accumulated more cushions than they received in each round. The point is that the fight started and War was back there giving it his all with his discomfort. But both were very powerful, and so they accumulated many cushions. They grew and people were dying of laughter until finally the battle ended. The hero joke used his new technique, which consisted of doing a stupid dance to manage to make people laugh, and the effect was incredible. But the goddess does not understand why the screen suddenly went black and War apologizes. If you want to see this ability, you will have to buy the limited edition of the hero's Blu-ray series. But in the end, the guy ended up winning and peace returned to the area. For War, everything came to an end in an unexpected way. That couple that the man hired ended up fighting, and everything was caused because the boyfriend did not brush his teeth after eating a fish dish. This means that he was with a not very good smell. So a worldwide rumor arose that if they started flirting in public, they would end up becoming a couple. People stopped doing that and War ceased to exist, or War takes advantage of the fact that she is wearing a kimono and asks what she thinks about them celebrating a out-of-season New Year. This consists of sitting at a table and them staying there eating mandarins while watching comedy, because that is all he wishes to do with a goddess. He also brought a souvenir, as he always usually does, and it is the complete Blu-ray collection, where the ability with the additional extras is located, and this interests the goddess very much. So the two end up sitting at the table, eat mandarins and start watching the complete series. But all this situation was also being observed by another side of the goddess. With the passage of time, we find the goddess singing with her beautiful and sweet voice. She gives it her all on stage. But then War appears, who gets quite excited seeing that she is having fun. He proposes to sing a duet, while the goddess wants to rip his ears off for having listened to her sing. But from him insisting so much, she ends up giving in, and the two perform a spectacular concert just for themselves. When they finish singing, the karaoke machine gives 90 points, and according to War, this happened because they are not compatible, so he expected nothing less, which is why he ends up being burned once again, because she gets annoyed that the two get along well together. And once again another small glimpse happen. It is not just us who are observing this, but also the god, who seems to be superior. He realizes that perhaps this goddess is interested in War. Returning to War, he just continues doing stupid things as always. However, he has a quite interesting question. War questions himself why he always needs, after all it would be faster if they revived him and that's it. And the goddess says that it makes sense, that would be great if it were possible. But it turns out that some gods do not like to revive people. It depends on each god to allow reincarnated individuals to exist. And the goddess tells War that since he has already been reincarnated several times and done a bunch of crazy things, he is ending up on a blacklist, which is unfair to him. Because he is defeating demon kings, he is also defeating the heroes, and according to the goddess, what matters is that the world does not end as God wishes. The vast majority is content with a good story, but the goddess ends up ruining everything. War supposes that if he does something crazy and dramatic, perhaps they will be satisfied, and thus he can achieve his objective. And since he is way too excited, the goddess does not want to waste time and wants to send him to another world. According to the infernal box, this time what he is going to be is the bomb to blow up the happy couples, which is the best news that this man has ever received. While he is preparing himself mentally, he thinks that to be dramatic he should be pure dynamite, or perhaps TNT, just like in Minecraft. Before leaving, he tells the goddess that she better prepare herself for a good dramatic story. He sets off on his journey while she is left alone. The goddess noticed one thing. The box that she gave to him never gives a decent reincarnation. She did that so that it would be something random. But it is already crossing the line, and as soon as this conversation ends, War was already back. The goddess gives the good notifications saying that he is a failure, because probably everything went wrong. And he says that he tried to make everything dramatic, but it seems it did not work out. The explosive into which he transformed was a banana peel. Upon hearing this, the goddess asks him to repeat it, because she is not sure that he said such a stupidity. He repeats it as she still cannot believe it. She wants to see with her own eyes. As soon as the screen turns on, we see that a banana peel makes everything explode. The goddess does not understand how that works, and War explains that every couple that slipped on it exploded and ended up with explosive hair. The goddess does not understand what he is talking about, and according to War, that is normal. You slip on a banana and your hair gets burnt. He tells that an unhappy girl saw the couple explode and that her name was Stola. She had a piercing gaze and wanted to blow up the heads of the happy couples. And it is curious because even the goddess notices that she is not ugly and could have her own relationship. War explained that this happens because her ideal man was very hard to find, so it was very complicated for that to happen. The goddess says that this is curious because there are many people who ruin their lives looking for a partner of whom they are not worthy, and she has one right in front of her. But according to him, Someday he will be a worthy man who will fulfill the 3 requirements. The goddess then says that she is referring to height, high earnings, and high education. And it is a pity according to her because he has 3 other requirements. He is intense, crazy, and unbearable. War continues having a certain fame. He says that for her it was 3 affinities: lightning, wind, and castanets. Returning to the subject, Stola looked down at him while he was on the ground and gave a stomp to see what would happen. However, War did not explode when she stomped on him. The girl ended up fallen on the ground because if it was not a happy little couple that stomped on him, he would not explode. But when that happened, the old men who were around them ended up with a strange expression. But War said that they did not even notice anyway. This girl became interested in War because she realized how that worked and how he hated happy couples. Now she was happy because she could destroy them. So Stola began sending them from one side to another in order to eliminate couple after couple. They fell because she was very wicked. Thus, she left explosive hair on 80% of the couples throughout the entire kingdom. The goddess says that at least the story is entertaining, but she does not know how he survived after exploding so many times. And he says that if you are going to reincarnate as an explosive, you need to become immune to explosions. Something that he did. Stola was not satisfied and wanted to blow up the 20% of couples that were missing. Because she was almost a demon queen, she was very happy looking at the peel, because she was going to manage to accomplish her objective. But then the goddess started to laugh. Thus, the girl became quite frightened, even though she already knew that the peel had the same purpose as her. So she accepted, and the 2 joined forces to manage to blow up everyone they could. When they had already reached those 80%, a hero also appeared to face them, and he recognized who the demon queen was. She became very irritated upon seeing him, but he said that no matter how much she unloaded her anger on others, she would never be a happy couple, which made the queen even more furious. But the guy did not lose time, so he went straight to attack her directly. While doing this, he said that he was a hero who goes to karaoke alone, and who also has barbecues alone. He even had the courage to form a solo band, and the queen wanted to eliminate him. So she ended up throwing the banana at him, and it scored and flew at more than 150 kilometers per hour to fall at the feet of the hero. The guy spun around several times and ended up slipping. But since he was not in a happy couple either, he did not explode. However, the people who were near him transformed in a horrible way. The hero did not give up and wanted to keep attacking. But Wary had the power to make things slip, so he was able to make the hero's magic slip. And all that magic that bounced off ended up transforming the men into muscular men. 90% of the village ended up looking like a bodybuilder or started to have muscle problem. Stola was already cornered. But that guy did not understand why Stola did all of that, since he was also alone. His life was very sad, so he made a proposal to her, which consisted of fighting in a fair way. If he managed to win, he wanted her to stop blowing up the hair of couples, something that she could no longer understand. But he insisted that he knew what it was like to feel that way and advised her to limit herself to looking at them with hatred. In the end, Stola accepted and began her final battle against the hero. And that was a battle of street bands, because they wanted to be musicians and knew how to play instruments. Out of nowhere, there were a lot of people there at a very incredible show. Stola did not stop insulting while singing to the men, because to her everyone was an animal. She said with bitterness that the only thing she needed was for happy couples to explode. But the hero did not respond to hatred with more hatred, and instead resorted to love. He said that that problem was hers because love is the best thing. Love is a magic. A simple fantasy is like a dream. For Stola that was not true, because he was a failure. The hero said that he was just a man, and that because of that he faced love. But to her those words meant nothing. However, in a moment when the two were contradicting each other, the music started to get incredible. Suddenly they were singing in unison. The people were having a lot of fun at the concert. This battle of bands was a great success, and the two smiled after giving it their all, and Ori exploded the happy couples to hype up the concert even more. But he had also forgotten that he was a banana peel. With the heat of the explosions he rotted even faster, and that was how everything ended. After he departed, Stola and the hero started dating. Because the hero fulfilled the 3 requirements of the Demon Queen, they ended up forming a super popular band, which is why Ori brought back as a souvenir a CD of theirs, called Macho Explosion. The goddess gets sad because they have little creativity, but at least it is a gift, so she thinks about listening to it. She was playing with one of the instruments that they used, so Ori said that he was already expecting to hear a song from her, although she replies that that will never happen, and that God was observing this scene once more. He was surprised, and the goddess finally took off the castanets, that is, that instrument. and while they kept doing silly things, at that moment Ori received a message from the former demon king Pisceus. The goddess does not understand why a demon king who died because of him sent a message, and Ori tells that it is true that he hates him, but he killed the god that he hated even more. Because of that, they ended up exchanging emails, and he tells that after his tragic death, that guy traveled to the past and took on the form of the sockeye salmon. In this, we see a family that was very anxious because they wanted to eat their favorite food, and by coincidence it was canned sockeye salmon. The goddess starts doing the math, and this guy says that that man has a hermit crab as a student. And now that she thinks better about it, the goddess thinks that this resembles Master Sockeye Salmon, the one who taught the infernal kick of the burning thunder. The goddess says that that is the demon king Pisceus. Ori could not believe something like that, but he did not tell it either. He just saw that it was already time to reincarnate in order not to stay behind him. And this time he ended up becoming a descendant of the world tree that tries to survive against the beavers. Ori is very carefree and thinks that it will not be so hard. But from the moment he is already entering his ship, the goddess gets desperate because it seems that the door is going to disappear, and for making bad jokes, she will only give him one ability. While he is in that strange world, she continues practicing with the balls, and each time she is getting the rhythm better. But this time Ori is taking a little longer than usual, so she thinks that perhaps she was a little harsh sending him with only one ability without any broken power, although she does not care much either. However, Ori comes out of the microwave. He tells that he entered a door that said temporary name and ended up arriving here somehow. Although he makes it clear that his world was very fun, she realizes that she worried for nothing. But she is not interested either. She wants to see his interior. Because of that, we go to that world where everything revolved around Ori's father, the world tree, and Trishiro, his brothers, and he formed a forest around his huge body, and they show us that the one that is most orange is Ori. He tells that everything was going well until the war started when an army of beavers attacked them. And it was not going to be anything simple, because those beavers were armed. They also had a complete language and a lot of intellect. It was a powerful army, and the only objective they had was the protection of the world. Animals from all over the world also wanted to help protect the tree, but it was too difficult of a fight. They went and destroyed everything from one side to another, and he had to watch the beavers devour his brothers. It was a horrible situation, so Ori used his powerful throat to launch an attack of screams. The beavers began to get immobilized, but for some reason his allies also did. This happened because Ori's scream was way too powerful. It was louder than a jet engine. He was putting up a good fight, but in the end his defenses were broken. They surrounded him because he did not know how to move, and suddenly they started eating his brothers again. Not even his father escaped from the massacre. And since Ori was paralyzed, he could only bite his nails while watching everything terrified, even though he did not have fingers either. The goddess thinks that he had no choice whatsoever, so he did very well since he had no legs, but Ori says that he actually did. It was the extra that he wanted because he wanted to walk around, and when Ori remembered that little detail, he stopped being paralyzed and ran off to protect his family. Using his screams and running in every direction, he initiated a massacre. To his brothers, he was a bit disgusting, but they were also very grateful, and his father was too. Even so, they wanted him to lower his voice, and they even said that in several languages with a lot of anger. They also told that since he had legs, he was the only one who could put an end to that war. But according to the goddess, it seemed more like his family just wanted to get rid of him. But Ori did not care and went to the dam of the beaver village. To put an end to that, the beavers were waiting for him. But Ori was very fast. The beavers tried to warn the biggest of all the beavers that that tree was coming. He was playing when he lost. He got angry because they distracted him. This was the king of the beavers, named when he saw Ori. He was surprised because it was a walking tree, and that made no sense. But that did not matter. It was at that moment that the final battle began, which was the two of them screaming at each other. The sounds were intense, so it ended in a tie. Rick Beaver wanted to resolve that in a dance battle, something that Ori had no problem accepting. In front of all the beavers, this other battle began. Each one gave it their all in every movement. The precision of both was incredible, and something that he could not believe. Ori ended up being the winner. Rick Beaver, in a very kind manner, said that he promised to leave the world tree in peace, admiring the great legs that Ori had. Now the goddess feels curious and asks why they were attacking the world tree to begin with. Ori explains that it was because they used that wood to make dams, beaver things. The problem was that when Ori returned home to deliver the good news, he was received as a monster because of those legs, and unable to endure those looks. Ori asked Rick Beaver to eliminate him and use him as wood. A very sad ending considering that he saved the world. But anyway, that was why he also returned here and did not come alone, but brought with him a sprout of the world tree. He placed it in the same plant where he grew, and that is the gift for the goddess, who takes a small piece from his head to put on Ori. He wanted to give it a very name for himself, but the goddess did not want that. The two of them were having fun as always and tell us something interesting. A long time ago, the multiverse almost lost its balance because of different worlds, and this happened because they had a bad evolution. We see a quite strange world where there are a bunch of people thanking God in unison. They say that they are very happy and hand over everything to him. While a very cute little dog goes running around, suddenly we see that the god they are exploiting is attacked, and it is none other than the goddess. She announced to that guy that she was going to eradicate him, but the god did not understand because he said that he was bringing happiness. He started to attack the goddess, but it was nothing before her power, and while that cute little dog keeps advancing around there, the goddess also starts to strike with more force, and that god who is being attacked recognizes her as the goddess of eradication. The guy tries to face her as best as he can, but the goddess is way too fast, and her strength is lethal. No matter how much he asks for forgiveness, she already has prepared a huge arrow with which she intends to eliminate him. Even with him begging and asking for mercy, the goddess of preaching dismissed from their divine position those who had become evil, and the souls of the gods who evolved bad worlds were sent to the sealed quasar. When the goddess finished eliminating that guy, she realized that without intending to, she also ended up hurting the little dog. He was in a very bad state, but the goddess approached. She could not save him, but she remained there until the final moment. That is it. It is something that happened a long time ago. And so, in the present, the goddess is there bored and just existing. But out of nowhere Oris arrives to bother her as usual. While swinging his next world, he asks what she is thinking, and she says that she is not thinking about anything. Suddenly, they throw the ball of his next world and hit her right in the face. This time, he will be a torch placed on the wall of a dungeon, and to travel to that world, he needs to transform, and for that, he needs to be charred. The goddess sends him with great pleasure. When he finishes transforming, he realizes that he fell into a video game world, and the goddess spends her time alone and very peaceful until Ori returns. She welcomes him back, and just to look more stylish, Ori decides to fuse this time with the tower in order to be able to show everything he lived, as was already mentioned before. This time, he was the only torch on the wall of the highest difficulty dungeon. He was already in the tower where the hero's sword is sealed, and that sword ends up being the strongest weapon. Besides also granting wishes, it is quite broken. The goddess also requested as an ability to be able to slide freely across walls. However, thanks to that, he managed to map out to the last corner of the dungeon. But it was then that the sword also said something to him. That sword was also the hour hand of the clock. It was his work colleague in a former world. This man is named Yamada, and even if Ori does not tell us exactly what he said, he tells that the day arrived when the hero's party challenged them. This group was formed by the hero, a warrior, a martial artist, and a knight, who believed themselves to be the strongest of all. He told Ori to guide the hero, so that they could get the sword faster, because he had no problem doing so. But Yamada asked him to train that hero, since it was noticeable that he was very much a novice. This made no sense to the goddess, because he was a torch. Nobody is going to ask that of a torch. Ori tells that it is because some things happened while he was investigating the area. He also annihilated the monsters of the dungeon, and the monsters would reappear after a while, something that seemed good to the goddess. He took the opportunity to ask what his level was at that time, and according to Ori, he was at the maximum level, which was 99. He was a torch broken from being so powerful, and under his guidance, the heroes conquered the dungeon without problems. They advanced and melted the enemies as if it were nothing. They believed that being together in life and in death would make them stronger, because they were a very passionate group. Ori tells that they were childhood friends, and that was why they had so much affection for each other. This interests the goddess very much, because she thinks that then a romance is going to happen among all those men. After several months, the heroes reached the top floor. Upon arriving there, Yamada was very happy because they were going to succeed. However, he realized that perhaps it was not even necessary, because the heroes were very scary, all thanks to Ori's training. as he was very confident, the hero went to try to pull out that sword, which was going to become what it was destined to be. The moment they pull out the sword, another man also appears who was very irritated and did not want to forgive any of them, because they used him as bait. He was also part of the hero's party, and they left him behind. Now he measures over 4 meters tall. They abandoned him against a huge golem. But that was why that man became obsessed with revenge and fused with the golem. Thanks to that, he arrived alone at that place and was so irritated that he was thinking of carrying out a massacre right there. But a notification arrived for Ori. Professor Sockeye Salmon had just sent a message. To be able to read it, Ori wants to accelerate even further what he lived. That hero group could not do anything against their friend, who was a great martial artist. He started that massacre that he wanted to do, and even the hero could not do anything. Even having the sword, Ori put himself in the way and told him to stop. While holding his friend Yamada, he was saying that he was just a simple torch that was passing by there. And right after that he ended up pulverizing that monster. He transformed him into a simple stone. And then the adventurers and the hero got very excited with that. They wanted him to accompany them on their next adventures. But Ori did not want to do those foolish things, because it is very absurd for a torch to defend itself alone. And that was when Ori noticed something. Arms had grown on him, and he was moving. And that was bad, because when he realized that he was no longer on the wall, his life ceased to make sense. For that reason, he self-destructed. While he was telling this, he also received another message, but this time from Tanaka. Master Sockeye Salmon is going to throw a party in the dungeon where they were, and Tanaka is also going to attend. Ori did not want to miss that party for anything in this world, so he started swinging that thing. And his next reincarnation would be the pillowcase of the inn where the dungeon's hero sleeps, or Ori ends up leaving while making the entire television. The goddess also started organizing her own little party so that she could have fun. She also had Sockeye Salmon, so it was great. But she was left with a doubt. The box gave a reincarnation that he wanted, which was very strange. Ori returns and is extremely drunk. Without wasting time, the goddess wants to see his report. And the only thing she finds is that Ori and his friends were having a lot of fun. Tanaka tells that he continued his journey around the world, but in the end, he could not find his girlfriend. Sockeye Salmon said that these things happen sometimes, but that they could celebrate for the reunion of Tanaka and his girlfriend in the future. The goddess did not know why she was seeing that, but suddenly, Ori started receiving shocks. And that happened because she launched a 1 million volt lightning bolt at him. He did not even care much, because in any case he wanted to start drinking again. But at least, he started telling the report a lot. This time, he became the pillowcase of Hyaohua, an adventurer at the inn. She was a woman, but there was a problem. Perhaps she was tired, but she snored way too loud and drooled a lot. And that was horrible. But at least, Ori could smell her freshly washed hair. That was a good thing, or Ori spoke directly to her. He introduced himself as her pillowcase. And the girl got so frightened that she passed out, which is something very good. And after several faintings, Hyaohua was able to hear him. And what Ori did was brainwash her so that she would train with Master Sockeye Salmon and also with Tanaka. Only in that way would she manage to awaken her true potential. After reciting a few words, Hyaohua ended up being sent to a special world, and it was there where she trained with Master Sockeye Salmon and also with Tanaka. They put her to climb waterfalls until her potential began to flourish, and when that happened, she did so well that she conquered the dungeon at a terrifying pace and reached the top floor. That horrible monster was already waiting for her and was prepared to tear her head off. But she not only fought against that martial artist, but also defeated him in his prime form. Yamada congratulated her for having reached that place, and she got scared because her sword also started talking out of nowhere. The sad Yamada was already saying that she needed to ask for a wish, but she ended up passing out once again. When she regained consciousness, she began to think and realized that she received the wish for conquering that dungeon. And that was already more than enough. She handed the wish over to Ori, and the wish of the former hero was also granted. He just wanted to be stronger, and then everything came true. The martial artist still continued protecting the hero's sword and grew so much that now the sword was just a simple knife. And after that, Ori went to a bar with Master Sockeye Salmon and Tanaka to celebrate everything that happened. But he was so drunk that he could not speak properly, so he ended up falling asleep. The goddess was already thinking about using a lightning bolt to wake him up. But when she was about to do that, the screen showed what happened. At that party, Ori decided to return with the goddess, and all he wanted was for the two of them to drink alone, and that's it. Just for that, the goddess ended up taking a sip, even though it was very bitter. But leaving that beautiful moment aside, we go to another conversation between the gods. One of them says that all of his worlds are growing without problems, and that the multiverse will continue to prosper more and more. That was the development report of the worlds of each area, and whoever seemed to be in charge of them was satisfied. But they were also going to present those who on that day ascended to the rank of gods. He seemed to be the most important pad for those people to enter. But no matter how much he insists, nobody appears. For that reason, one of the gods warns that he did not activate remote participation, a strange setting that allows others to enter. The problem is that those who entered were complaining that the god was a stupid person, because he did not know how to use that thing properly. The gentleman got angry and said that 500 dragons of the apocalypse were going to attack their worlds as a punishment. He took the opportunity to remind the new gods of something. Their goal is to reach a higher plane by cultivating their worlds. The new gods need to strive to create a better world, and with that they will be able to honor their true creator. If they were in agreement, they could raise a thumb up. And 3 of them did so. 1 more refused, and the same one who refused said that he had a question and wanted to ask it. However, this made one of the gods irritated, because it was very disrespectful. But he did not care in the slightest. That god asked if they knew Ori and began to show the massive amount of worlds through which he had passed. He told the gods that worlds need irregularities in order to develop, but they cannot leave someone like him walking around freely. He found no sense in that, and many people were being harmed because of him. And that is a fact, because Ori caused chaos everywhere he stepped. So he asks if that was not the fault of the goddess who reincarnated him everywhere. They had doubts as to why they let that goddess do whatever she pleased, although some found her very attractive, so they did not get angry. But they did not want them to go crazy. Then one of the goddesses steps forward and warns that everyone needs to behave, or they will end up banished. The person in charge begins to tell an ancient story from when our goddess was called the goddess of creation. They say that a god who interferes in the creation of worlds is not a god. They are just rotten fruits that hinder their evolution. And that was the sermon that they gave to the goddess. Besides being something that the true creator thought, they used her to eliminate garbage as quickly as possible. And that makes that guy ahead question himself, because that would probably also happen to them. In case they failed when cultivating their worlds, a gentleman tries to reassure him, saying that they are punished only for that. He shows the amount of strength, determination, and zero mercy that the goddess had when eliminating each of the gods who did their work wrong. That girl ended up having a power that was not normal even among the gods. Because of that, she began to be feared and also hated, until they forced her to change class. The goddess of eradication ended up transforming into a goddess of reincarnation, which is the one we know nowadays, and there she is, very peaceful, taking her power. According to the gods, they demoted her to a position that has no future, and nowadays the selection of reincarnated individuals is almost completely automated. They do not even depend on a god to do anything. But very occasionally irregularities arise that do not fit the standards, such as Ori, since they have the potential to evolve a world. Whether that will become something good or bad, that is the job of the goddess of reincarnation. It is because of the way she used to act in her work. This goddess deals with each one of them, although all of this is still very strange. In the present, Ori tells the goddess that he had a very strange and exhausting life. Now, he reincarnated as the trident of the sea god, and without meaning to he ended up sinking 5 continents. But that is also something that one of the gods who are up there complains about, because the guy sank 5 continents that were fertile and very prosperous, and the goddess does not care in the slightest, which is why they want him to be eliminated. But the power of the goddess makes them not act without caution, because they do not know what she would be capable of. There is also the question of why the creator of all does not stop that guy who is out of his mind, referring to Ori. However, whoever is in charge of those meetings says that the intentions of the creator will always be a mystery. But if this continues like this, these worlds will end up destroyed. He swears by his pride as a god that Ori is going to pay for this. Returning to the goddess, she is watering the little plant that Ori gave to her. Every day it gets bigger. And it is curious because the goddess kept every single one of the gifts that he brought, no matter how strange they were. This time, when she looks at them, she remembers the first time she met Ori. As we already know, he acted like an idiot and said that she was gorgeous and that he was willing to obey any order from his queen. Thinking about that, she tried to fake a smile, but she could not. However, at that moment, Ori returned and asked the goddess why she was looking so much at Steph's Gagut. which is what the little plant is called. According to the goddess, it was nothing. The goddess asks if by any chance she is now a young woman in love, but she clarifies that she is a woman much, much older than him. That does not matter to Ori, and he just apologizes because this time he was the shoelace of a hero. At the end of the adventure, he ended up being burned by a 1,000-year-old dragon, and he did not have time to bring a gift. The goddess was going to say that she does not care about gifts, but Ori says that he wants to give her a huge smile as a separate gift. However, the goddess cannot look directly into his eyes, but ends up charring him to also welcome him back. Now we return to the scene where the goddess went to the little dog, because there is a legend where the goddess of eradication picked up the corpse of that little dog. He was not destined to die, and the only thing the goddess did was apologize to him. This happened because since she ended up getting involved in that, the dog left the reincarnation cycle. She tried to return him on her own. When she went to talk to do that, they said it was a very complicated task, since his soul could no longer return to that cycle and would be extinguished in a short time. But while the goddess saw how his soul was diminishing, she also asked what that little dog was doing. For that reason, that gentleman showed what he was doing, and that little animal was treated like trash. There was a guy who saw him and said that God would never choose trash like him. However, a person stepped in front before he continued hurting the dog. The guy got irritated because, according to him, he was cleaning up the trash in the name of God. But before something worse happened, the ritual for that god was about to begin, and the person who had stepped in front was the goddess. Just as the ritual was starting, she went off to attack that god, and that little dog managed to see her, developed affection for her, and ran around until reaching near her. And when she understood that situation, she asked that man to send him to that earth. The gentleman was not very sure, but felt that it was also the only option he had, since it was the place where all souls were polished. They called that the Blue of Trials, but it was planet Earth. They accumulated the soul of the little dog to be able to send it, and the goddess wanted them to hurry, because he would end up disappearing, but the little dog would not stop looking at her. And returning to the present, she comes across Worry's face, smiling at her in the same way as that little dog and celebrating his own birthday. But when the goddess saw that, she got irritated and told him not to hold his stupid parties there. Worry wanted them to celebrate together, but she said that he did not want to do those things. However, since she also blew out Worry's candles, that means it is also her birthday, according to Worry's silly logic. Of course he insists that they celebrate, but she says she does not want to, which is sad, because he tells her that she always spends her time alone. The goddess thinks he is nobody to say that, but he tells that when he was human he had a party with friends, and that hurts the goddess because she cannot believe it and very irritated. She asks if by any chance he is implying that she is inferior to him. Even so, to calm her down, he tells that in the other worlds he spent time almost always alone, and with that she breathes relieved, because nobody would celebrate a birthday with inanimate objects or strange beasts, which is what he always transforms into, and that is more or less true. The goddess says that when he was the clockmaker of a clock, he was too busy causing problems for couples to be able to celebrate his birthday. The goddess takes the opportunity to say that she is receiving constant complaints from the affected gods, so he needs to start behaving. Something very funny is that when those gods complain to her, the girl teases them saying that it is their fault for losing against Ori. But he is going too far, so he needs to be careful, as they might ally together and do something bad. She says the time has come for his next reincarnation, even if that leaves Ori very sad, because he had even prepared a gift. The goddess says that even so she will accept his gift, so he does not need to worry, but he asks if she is not going to give him anything. As a gift, the goddess lets him choose the world for his next reincarnation, and this time he is going to be a hero's curry dish, which also leaves him sad, because he feels hungry now and does not want to be a curry. The goddess also has doubts about whether he will make a hero's curry dish in the entire world, or if it will be just a single curry dish for the hero. Nobody knows, but what Ori wants to request as an additional thing is that the hero is not a man, but rather a heroine, and for the goddess that is no problem. She will grant that this time, although she does not know why that matters so much to him, but he would not like at all to see a man eating him. If it were a charming woman, he would be much happier. However, since he seems way too happy about that, she no longer wants to grant anything else, just because he is being amusing. But, in any case, they are going to send him to that world. He will be in a restaurant where the curry is very famous. But before leaving, Ori also tells the goddess not to forget to open the gift, and after that he sets off at full speed to the next world. Being all alone, it is very strange for the goddess to see Ori, because he reminds her of that little dog. Taking advantage of the fact that she is alone, she also looks for new clothes and wants to try on what Ori left her, which is a necklace. She liked it quite a bit because he has good taste, but then he arrives and she ends up changing clothes very quickly, pretends nothing happened, and hides the necklace. Ori notices that she has already opened the gift, although according to her she is already selling it, but that does not matter now. What she wants is to hear his next report, and we begin to see how it went in his new world. The heroine was named Ryan Merck. She was very weak and sickly, despite being a heroine, but that happened because every time she defeated the monsters attacking the village, she would start having asthma. That was when Ori met her at 10 years old. It was around that time that she slaughtered Darkin, a general of the Demon King, with her own hands. She finished him off with great ease, and she was lying in bed, exhausted after the battle. For that reason, her mother prepared a foreign dish for her. That dish would be Ori, and thanks to the curry, Ryan's only weakness recovered. She enjoyed every bite, and that helped her, because Ori asked for an extra, which was to cure incurable diseases, something that ended up being very convenient this time. When she reached adulthood, she ended up defeating the Demon King and saving the world. But after defeating her greatest enemy while being so young, she began to feel a great emptiness, as if drowning in loneliness. But that was because she saw no sense in continuing to be a heroine, and for some reason she still had Ori's plate. According to her, a hero performs acts of courage, and now she had a new objective, which was to open a curry restaurant, because just as happened with her, she wanted to give the world the opportunity to change their lives by eating curry. She opened the heroine curry restaurant, and at first it had many customers, and everyone enjoyed the food. But something happened, and we will stop right here. Let the mystery remain. Leave a like and comment if you enjoyed the video, and let me know if you want part 2 of the craziest anime I've ever seen. A kiss.